Okay, it's 12. It's exactly 12 o'clock, so we'll kick off the show. Usually we start with a hook, and today's hook is a myth-busting moment. Basically, this is just debunking book promotion myths. So we're going to debunk some of the myths about book promotion. It is not as hard, but we'll try and get through this. Yeah. So to begin with, think of book promotion like planting in a garden. So there are people who have different beliefs. There are those who think you need to have the fanciest tools. I'm referring to having a huge following or a sprawling estate. As an example of a traditional publisher, so that you're able to grow to some amazing numbers in terms of book sales. Yeah, but here's the truth: success comes from doing little, yeah, but consistently on that garden, no matter the size. I'll just go into some misconception and examples so that this is clear. Now, myth number one is you need a huge social media following. Is that true? Maybe not. The reality is just like planting one seed can yield a big tree like an oak tree. Yeah, engaging with a small but loyal audience can create incredible word of mouth growth. Here is where we're talking about having presence. You kind of like interact with other authors and your readers. If they're reviews, you share them. That ends up being word of mouth, and the growth is enormous. A good example is Andy Weir. He started The Merchant as a blog, and his niche followers propelled it into a bestseller status. Can you imagine that? Then myth number two, only traditional published books succeed. That's the other myth, yeah. What's the reality? Self-publishing is like building your own greenhouse. In a greenhouse, you control everything, the environment, you control the growth, you control the inputs, the investment, yeah. And this is where you see authors like Colleen Hoover. She grew massive sales by connecting directly with readers through online platforms. Yeah. So this is one way self-publishing can be quite rewarding. Yeah. And I'll have a look at the third myth, the last and third one, that you need a big budget. The reality is different from that. Yeah. Creativity is your sunlight. Hosting free webinars, leveraging on social media like TikTok, creating compelling posts can give good results. Yeah, a good example is Adam Croft. He became a millionaire author by running inexpensive Facebook ads for his self-published mysteries. So the key takeaway here is start with what you have. Then you nurture it on a daily basis with creativity and care, and you just watch how your your writing career will be propelled into the limelight. And this is why we have the cozy book Nook, yeah, where we help listeners improve their results. Jen, maybe you want to share briefly how you've been able to do some of these inexpensive ads on X and Amazon and the impact it has on your book sales.
Thanks very much for that intro. Just briefly, but again, this could be a whole show, right? Just on ads. But what I found was that certain platforms and the advertising eats up a lot of money very quickly, and you don't really get results. So you're down a lot of money, and it can be really discouraging. So you don't have to have a lot of money to run an effective ad. And on Amazon, there are ways to do it to keep your costs down, but it can be sort of tricky when you're learning. So you tend to, drop a lot at the start. It gets better. But what I found was on X, the ad cost is really cheap. So like the entry point, the way to get in to the market to be seen is a lot less. So for probably $1 a day, couple bucks a day maximum, you can actually get your book seen. And I think it's not like that on a lot of the other platforms, people who've run Facebook ads. And when you do the other promo sites where you might be dropping $75 to $100 for a 1-day promo and stuff like that, it can be quite costly. So, if anybody is ever thinking of trying an inexpensive ad on X or is doing setting up an Amazon ad, I was on another podcast once chatting about that with Simon, and I've chatted about X ads before. But just keeping your costs low and your bids really low is sort of another strategy for getting our books out there to actual readers, sort of pushing it beyond just your followers.
Thank you very much, Jen, for sharing that. Hello, welcome to this week's podcast of the Cozy Book Nook, an Express's weekly writers' talk show about book promotion and developing your writer platform. I'm your host, Laban T. Esquire, at Inspired by Laban, and our co-host is Jen McLeod at JG McLeod Author. Christina Gabel at Love Golden Heart is away on holiday this week and next week, so I'll be your host in the meantime. We developed the Cozy Book Nook to support book promotion side of writing. Your book deserves the best representation and promotion. Let's commit to promoting our books or author platforms weekly.
I'm really honored to be here today, so thanks, Laban, and to Christina for the invite. And it's also exciting because we have 2 guests on here who form individual authors on their own, but then also a writing duo. And as you'll soon find out if you don't already know, they have written so many books, and I have so many questions about how they achieve that in such a busy world. But we do this every week, as Laban pointed out, just to try to share strategies with people. Sometimes we try things and fail, and it can get discouraging and we want to give up. But, I'm one of those people, and I think lots of us have had that experience where we've tried something, it didn't work, and together we can motivate each other to keep trying and take risks and get better and better at this. So I'd like to, turn it back over to Laban if he has any housekeeping before we get started.
Absolutely. Please mute while all the Cozy Book Nook guests speak. Use the comment section to share feedback for hosts and speakers. Ask to speak and to promote your website or book link. Look for the conversation bubble chart symbol and click that. Keep communications positive and uplifting. We are a supportive writing community family.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right. Now we get to the exciting part with author Julie Kusma. I have a few words to say as I introduce her, and then I'd love it before we get into some more specific kind of topics and questions. Julie, if you have anything else you want to add when I'm done. But just very briefly, you write in multiple genres. And so Julie does spec fic, which is speculative fiction, educational, inspirational, children's books. So you may have seen these works by Julie, and they're wide-ranging and inspiring. She has a Master of Science in Health Education and a Master of English. So art in English, so creative writing, fiction. So together, that's quite a background. And I just want to see if there's anything else sort of biographical that you'd like to share before we get into some topics.
Thank you, Jen. That's what we do, write in several different genres. My personal passion is speculative fiction, but of course it ties in with my health education background because I have a fondness for psychology and understanding the human experience, and I like to try and incorporate that in the stories I write, something about that sometimes we misunderstand psychologically and what's going on around us.
That's really neat. And when you were doing your degrees, were you writing and publishing back then too? Or was this something that you did later? Did you get into this and start this later, or was your publishing journey sort of early on and kept going?
It wasn't early on. a late bloomer. In fact, I had gone to college for interior design, and that was always my passion, was architecture and interior design. And I had an accident, broke my leg, was pretty severe, and it changed my course. I had to drop out of school at the time, and I was an adult when this was happening. I didn't go back to college till I was 50. And it changed the course when I had to drop out of the art school I was enrolled in. And I got my health education degree to help myself heal so I could understand what was going on with my body. And then that led me to the fascination with psychology, particularly the Jungian shadow. I could talk about that forever. I'm just fascinated by how we layer our subconscious mind and cognitive distortions and all of that. And it led me to want to write stories to share that. One of the first books I wrote for my thesis in that master's is a book called Be Well So You Can Thrive. It's unpublished. And it started my journey because a traditional publisher told me I needed a platform of at least 10,000 followers. The book was great. The proposal was great. I needed a following. And that led to me getting a job as a content writer with Coffee House Writers. And that really launched my writing career. And from there, helped me start to build my platform, social media platform.
That's such an amazing journey. And this is what I love about shows like this. So this podcast, because I've known you for a long time, but I didn't know all of those little, moments in your journey that led you to that. I always knew about your degree, but I didn't know sort of what led you there and what led you away from there and then into publishing and stuff. I find that really interesting that they mentioned the followers. It doesn't have to be this huge number like Laban said, but often these publishing houses want what they think is the right size, I guess, to have as a minimum. And I've heard that before. So that's kind of intriguing. It's almost like they want to ensure that the marketing piece is covered, that they know that the person that they're going to be publishing is going to be doing some of the work. So that's really interesting. What have your marketing efforts looked like so far? Like, where have you mostly focused them?
Well, primarily, Derek and I focused in social media. And this past year, though, we've decided to turn our efforts to the real world. One of the things we both love doing is going to free libraries and making donations of our books and of our friends' books, other co-authors. And we record that. And then we get to use those videos for social media content on TikTok and Instagram and things like that. But it gets our books in people's hands. We have also been very fortunate to teach writing classes at some of the Scottish Borders schools. And when we do this, and Derek can tell you more about that because he's the one that got us that connection. But when we do that, we leave our books, several books with the teachers and the students who often ask if they can have them. And it gives us great pleasure and pride to be able to do it. And we get asked back again and again. And it's just great fun.
Do you find when you go there that it's focused around a recent release? Do you bring your children's books? Do you bring poetry, or is it more just an interactive experience and less focused on yourself as an author, or is it a nice combination? Does it blend the two?
We pretty much, it's not really so much focused on ourselves. We do bring books, but which ones fit with what we're teaching? Typically, we're doing premise to publication. So how to take the idea and develop it into an actual book premise. And we've come back. Sometimes we do the whole thing, talk about the whole writing process. And a lot of times we come in for character development. Sometimes we're asked to talk about plot lines, and when it's a character-driven plot or it's a plot-driven story. And then we'll bring specific books that would fit in with what we're teaching.
That's a really neat idea for a lot of us listening, because not only are you giving back to the community when you're doing that, because from my background, schools don't have the money to be able to afford to have guest authors come in if they charge a large sum. So when it's reasonable, they can do that, but you're giving back to the kids to inspire them and give, you're teaching them skills they might not get out of the regular curriculum. So that's fabulous. And a lot of us could probably do things like that too. What's been the most difficult challenge when it comes to marketing? Have you struggled with anything or found anything
I struggle
hard?
with all of it, honestly. I find it a bit elusive, and I've been reading quite a bit, marketing, and Derek does too, and about how to proceed, which is kind of what led us to doing real world marketing. I actually have started a newsletter on LinkedIn that is about my marketing journey. So you can subscribe to that and follow me along the way. I try and give some tips in it. But I find it all a little bit difficult to pin down. And I know Laban said that, the numbers don't matter. Sometimes they do. In direct marketing, you do need, you're not going to get every person to click through. If you get 100 people to view something, only maybe 0.5% or 1% is going to respond. And of those, maybe another 0.5% or 1% is going to go on to purchase it. So in some way, you do need numbers. And with advertising, if you're getting 10,000 people to view it, you may not get a click through. But if you're getting 100,000, 200,000, I think you can probably speak more to that, Jen.
Everything you're saying is 100% correct. And sometimes it amazes me how even after playing around with these ads, really getting the demographic down to where you are making the sales eventually, that sort of the rate of return to get it where the clicks to the number of impressions and the sales, so that you are not spending money. And I have that formula, but I still feel like, despite the fact I don't pay for the ads because I make more than I spend, it's still such a small drop in the bucket. It feels like a lot of effort, as you mentioned, for, little payoff. So I'm happy to have books in hands, but still there's a lot to learn, right? We still have so much to learn.
There's a lot to learn, and sometimes they change how, I find that with the social media, the algorithms change, and what you used to do no longer works. So
that's true too, because I thought I had finally figured things out around May, where I was having really good success, but then around September 1st, it shifted. The whole algorithm changed, and it took another month and a half to learn it again. So it's a wild place. So do you think there's a magic bullet for book sales? Is there something that has been quite effective for you?
Well, I'll tell you, I think if there is a magic bullet, it's just opportunity. And I think that means, for me, is getting our books in people's hands. Because if people can see them, read them, touch them, they're going to enjoy them. And then word of mouth, which is the most effective form of marketing, those people will go on and share, you've got to read this book by Julie Kusma, by Derek King. You've got to do this. So, and we all know stories of indie authors who made the rounds in a book club, and there was so much word of mouth that they eventually were picked up by a traditional publisher, and several books made into a movie. That would be a magic bullet if there was one. But first, you've got to get your book in those book clubs. You've got to get them reviewed. You want to get them in catalogs where libraries are buying them, where bookstores can order them to put on their shelves. Because that's one of the problems, I think, about just being on an online retailer. Somebody's got to know to look for you. At some point, if you have 100 reviews from Amazon, they start making you more visible and kind of marketing for you. But you're not going to go find someone on Amazon unless they know to look for your name or to look for your book.
Laban, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. I kind of like the way Julie has been able to, leverage on speaking engagement in schools, because this is kind of like a powerful tool for book promotion, especially for authors who are targeting younger audiences. Yeah, because I think there's this idea of the direct connection you get with your audience. Yeah. Speaking directly to students, where you're able to build a connection and it makes them more excited about the book. Yeah. And then there's that student to student buzz. I think this is a very clever thing you guys are doing. Yeah. It gives a compelling talk that makes students eager, and they share your book with friends and their family, and you get that buzz.
That's exactly what happens. We've had several of the kids stay after the class when it was dismissed and talk to us. Some asked for the books if they could keep them, and of course we gave them to them. But we even had one of the beginning classes, a group of kids started a fan club. So that was totally amazing to have that happen. It's been a great opportunity for us, and we continue to work with this Scottish Border School System, and Derek can speak to that because it was his connection that got us that. And one of the latest things that is now making its way through, I think, 60 schools that we've done recently.
Yeah, I think that also kind of establishes the credibility and authority, because when you're talking about the themes in your book, this positions you as a trusted voice in the subject.
Agreed, absolutely.
And then, schools also appreciate the authors who provide value beyond promotion. And then again, that enhances your reputation, Julie, doesn't it? And Derek?
Yeah, it's been very helpful, Laban. We, as Julie said, we started teaching in the schools, and as Julie also mentioned there's a project that we were invited to work on by the same organisation who invited us in to conduct the workshops in the schools. Again, on behalf of the sort of equivalent of the state government here, the Scottish Borders Council, we were invited to create the A to Z of construction careers as a presentation to use in their 60-odd schools. And having been a construction professional myself for 40 years or so, we had a wee bit of an advantage. To be fair, some of the letters in the alphabet, X, Y, and Z, proved to be a little bit tricky, but we did get there in the end. And of course, as you say, we've been able to leverage that. And there were a number of different sponsors and organisations involved in that particular exercise that we carried out. And they were very happy. They were delighted, in fact, with the presentation that we produced for them, both in terms of the content of it and the presentation and aesthetic of the piece, which Joey designed. So much so, we were invited to provide a little training video to go with the presentation for the benefit of the teachers, to help them understand how to best maximise the information that was there, and to engage with the pupils in a more meaningful way to try and get as much interest as they could in this particular project. And we continue to work with this organisation. It came to me through my previous occupation in construction. That's my background for over 40 years, as I say, and we continue to work with them. They're delighted with what they do, and there's nothing more satisfying than a repeat client who keeps coming back and asking you to do a little bit more.
Awesome. Also, congratulations to you, Julie. You have a new release, My Zombie Emotions.
Thank you.
I'll put the link in the chat box here. And it's such a creative and impactful way to help teens get their emotions and feelings. Yeah. A quick question that I have for you, Julie, before we open the floor for questions. And Jen, kindly, you may want to activate some other people there. Nob, Irish girl, Catherine Milan. Maybe they will have questions, yeah? So what inspired you to use the zombie metaphor to explore teens' emotions?
I found it just quite apropos. I think people can be kind of numb and to what's going on around them, and I related that to being a zombie. I thought teens may get a kick out of that. They might find it funny. It's a serious subject, what we feel, what we think, how our emotions react. And to explain some of that, one, letting teens know it's normal. You're going to feel all these things. But sometimes what we're feeling is maybe a misunderstanding of what's going on, or misinterpretation within ourselves. And so it was just a matter of explaining all of that. And I just think it's fun to learn when something is fun to read. And I found some graphics to go with it and made some charts on my own and gathered the information utilizing my expertise as a health educator and collaborated the information together and created the book. I just really enjoyed it. And Derek and I collaborated together to make Monster Me ABCs. And that's the context book for ABCs, but it's about emotions and feelings too, with tips for the parents on how to help their children understand, their little toddlers understand their emotions in the beginning and start de-escalating techniques when they get a little bit out of control as they try to gain control over themselves.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Julie. I think now we're going to open the floor to questions from the audience. Who will be the first one to go?
Okay, I have a question. Number one, I want to say that I follow your journey, Julie, through Twitter, on LinkedIn, and I just find what you and Derek are doing are just so amazing, and such a great resource of information I have received from your website also. But the question I do have, when you go into your libraries to give books, I've come to dilemmas where I'd walk into a library and they will make me come back at another time when the owner is there. How do you approach, bookshops or libraries just to donate your books without any hassles?
What Derek and I have primarily been doing is the free libraries. There is a network of people and they register them. They're called free libraries. Some here, oftentimes they're old phone booths. And in the States, sometimes they're they've made more than a mailbox, but like some type of little outdoor box with a door. They're always decorated and registered, but you can donate them there. They're quite popular. You make your video and drop off a book and say where it's located. It's signed copy. Come by and grab it. And we've had great success. We often go back and look and see a couple weeks later if our books are still there, and are always delighted when they've been collected by someone to love and read.
Awesome. Yeah, we do have some of those boxes here in town. Living in a big city, a lot of cities are surrounding me, and I think people are more afraid to put books out, free libraries out like that, in fear of people damaging. Unfortunately, there can be a lot of cruel people in this world. But what I come to have trouble with is when I walk into like a public library or a bookstore and I want to donate my books, and they always tell me to come back either when the owner's there or to contact somebody else in management. And yeah, they don't let me drop my books off, which I found to be very strange,
I agree with that. And I don't know if there's a process of contacting someone at the library to try and arrange that. I do know the libraries order their books through catalogs. Mm-hmm. But you're going to need a registered ISBN and certain publishers that have access, like Ingram Sparks or something like that, where those books would be available then in that catalog that bookstores and libraries can buy from. Yeah. But donating them at a library, I think, is a great idea. And I'll tell you what, Derek and I will look into that. And if I have any success, I will certainly let you know and put it in one of my newsletters, because that's a brilliant idea.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
We'll take another question.
Can I ask, Julie, you mentioned getting these books in catalogues. Can you explain for those of us who haven't had this experience how that works? By the way, thank you both of you for taking my free books to all the various locations you did. I really appreciate that.
You are so welcome. I'm not real sure how it works. We're in the process of migrating our books to Ingram Sparks, and their expanded distribution one goes back to Amazon, but it also puts you in, I don't know the name of the catalog, I can try and find it out, but it is a professional catalog where the books are in there. I think it's BizAc number. It's a different categorization than just what we're getting with Amazon and things like that. So you're going to have the books categorized, and they will look through there, and that's where they're going to order. It's the distribution center where they order. The catalog is how they get the books on the shelves. Each country is going to have a different setup. In the States, you can get ISBNs through Bowker and have them registered, and you can publish through Ingram Sparks, self-publish through Ingram Spark, and they will then distribute in the catalog and to other places. And one of the places they do distribute is Amazon. It is a little bit tricky. We've just began researching it, and if you have an ebook up on Amazon, you got to be careful. You can't get it up on Ingram within so much time, but you might. So it's a little bit complicated. But again, it's something as we perfect that, we will be sharing in our newsletters and online, because I just think if anyone knows how to do this well, they should share it with everyone. So when we figure it out, let's just help each other, because there's room for all of us to have bestsellers.
Absolutely.
I think we definitely there are a lot of people who would agree with me that you're both very supportive of the people in across social media, and we all appreciate that. Thank you.
I agree with Julie. I think one of the important things to do is look how you're publishing your books. I mean, we have up until now, as Julie was saying, we publish our books through a well-known online retailer. Let's just kind of leave it at that, largely because we're producing about 20 books a year. So it's a very efficient way for us and a very quick way to do it. But even when you're looking at the extended or expanded distribution, as they call it, for Julie and I, that only gives us access to the USA and the UK markets. Doesn't give us access to Canada or Australia or other English-speaking countries, not excluding anyone else, of course, but that's kind of quite limiting. So that was one of the attractions, and the reason we started to investigate Ingram Sparks is not only how we could broaden the geographical availability of our books, but also how we could get our books into libraries and to bookstores and into people's hands. And by publishing through a publisher associated with a catalogue that's utilised by the libraries and bookstores in your particular neck of the woods is a very good tool, and a very good way to broaden the exposure of your books.
Excellent for that addition, Derek. Any more questions from the audience before we move on?
Mary here. I have one question, because I'm not sure what you're confused on, so I might be able to help you out. You're using Ingram Spark. I understand that. As far as ISBNs go, I know that if you don't have one, they'll get you one for $85, but you can also go out and buy blocks of them you can buy a block of 10 for $200 and some dollars. And so it's a lot cheaper. But you were saying something about how you were filling things out on Ingram Spark and the information, which is they do ask for a lot. But what were you having problems with? I didn't quite understand what you're trying to figure out or having problems figuring out, because I can help you with that, because I know exactly what they want.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, I do have the ISBNs through Bowker, and I do have the books. I've been in Ingram Sparks, and they do ask for information. I have all of that available when I go in. What I was referring to was them publishing through Ingram. I remember reading something about if you can't have migrating books, so not a fresh publish, talking about migrating books from Amazon to Ingram. So if you have an ebook up, it has to be pulled down, I believe, for a year before it can be republished on Ingram. I could be wrong about that, because like I said, I just started looking into it. So just to publish directly through Ingram, yeah, brilliant. Understand, can do. We do buy, because we publish so much bulk ISBNs, and yes, understand that as well. It's just the trick of migrating. If you've got them published up one place, how do you move them? because you can't have them in both places.
But there is a way to do that. Okay.
Well, brilliant. Yes, I would love to
I'll tell
know.
you what it is. You'll change your book to have it be in its second production, a new production. You'll add the verbiage in there for that, and then you'll go ahead and put it to Ingram Spark.
Very nice.
So it'll be like it's a second edition, and you don't have to wait because you put it in there in your book where you have your first edition. All you need to do is to edit all that and put it for your second edition and put it in, and bam, you could automatically go and do it.
Well, that's brilliant, Mary. Thank you so much, because that is a
You're welcome.
golden nugget tip. Thank you so much.
It is a golden nugget.
It is.
Yes.
That's
So-
like winning the lottery right there. Thank you so much.
Yes, you just
because-
won the lottery.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad to help you.
Yes.
What the hell? Ingram Spark does have a catalog. They actually have more than one where the books go out. And what's nice about for you, because you're in Scotland, you guys are in Scotland, and there is a Ingram Spark facility actually in the UK. So the books actually go out pretty fast from there, which is beneficial because it is worldwide. It goes to every country that they're pretty much involved in. So I'm not saying that Amazon publishing for them is the right thing to do. And I'm not saying that Ingram Spark is the right thing to do, but I am saying that from everything that I've done, I'm on book 54, Ingram Spark is the way to go.
I agree with you. I agree.
So now you know what to do. You can make it as a second edition and go ahead and publish, and Amazon can't do anything about it.
Well, that's exactly what I'll be doing at 6:05 this evening.
6:05 this evening, okay. I'm glad to help you out.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Before we move on, I just have a quick question, Mary. Do you
Yes.
do a second cover? Do you have a different, totally different cover so that it really looks distinct, or do you just put second edition on your cover?
I put second edition where that's in the galley. Okay. On the cover, on the back cover, if I have it already on the cover, I'll update it. But you can also change the front cover. You can change your cover around a little bit and still be a second edition. You don't have to keep the same, but you can keep enough of it that people will understand. For instance, I did Big Cheese Fest. That's a long time ago. Book on Bullies. Very long time ago. That was like in 2016 I did that. And my text, the font I used was whatever it was. Anyways, it wasn't that interesting to me, but it was what I used at the time. And then when I stopped doing Amazon, I went to Ingram Spark. I changed that. I changed my font. And that spiced it up. That made it, improved it a ton. So just something as easy as just changing your font gives it a whole new, fresh look, but yet it's still the same book.
Brilliant. That's easy enough to do, isn't it?
It's very easy to do, and I thank you for saying that it's brilliant, but it does work. It totally does. That way your book is recognizable, but you've got it nice and fresh with having just your fonts and even your font colors changed. That's simple.
It is brilliant, and I'm very inspired.
I'm glad I was able to inspire you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mary, for the inspiration. We'll now
Oh,
move
you're
to...
welcome, Laban.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's why we always need your expertise on the show. We'll move to a guest speaker, to Derek King, Derek R. King 2. Derek is a renowned poet and author, and his work of poetry is themed around love, nature, and the Gothic. His other works include a nonfiction biography inspirational education and children's books. Is there anything else that you think we have left out, Derek?
I think that pretty well sums up the writing career today, Laban, to be honest. But there's always room for more. You know, I'm a young guy, got plenty to do, and yeah, I mean, I don't have the same background quite as Julie has. Certainly not in terms of the health education masters or creative writing. I trained as a construction professional. Dealing principally with commercial matters, contracts and finances. And it was during that time that I wrote my first book, which was the civil rights biography. So there's a couple of things I might like to share about that experience, if I may, to do with marketing, if that would be okay with the folks on the call here.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Sounds
Go
great.
ahead.
Okay. Cool. So, like many people, I was new to publishing at that time. It wasn't what I was doing. Like many people, I had a career I was working at, and by the time I got to the end of the book, I was just keen to get it out there. So, unlike folks that have talked about Ingram Sparks and Amazon here, I chose the hybrid route, because I wanted to be able to place this book somewhere where they could do all the copyright and legal checks, given it was a non-fiction work. It had to be spot on, didn't want to be sued, obviously. Also wanted to pass on ask the hybrid publisher to organise the editing for me, the publishing, the proofreading, the cover, all that good stuff that everyone knows on this call is vital to a good book. So that's the route I took. And the experience I wanted to share is fundamentally this. That's all great. You get your book published, and then they start chatting to you about how you're going to market your book, how you're going to publicise your book. You thought about blog tours, social media, all that kind of good stuff. And of course, being at that time predominantly a construction guy, the short answer to all of those questions was no, hadn't really thought about it. So they put me in contact with a publicist, and they put me in contact with a marketing agency, and they organised some blog tours for me. Now, the book I was promoting here was a non-fiction book set in the US civil rights in the 1950s and 60s about one particular individual whose name wasn't widely known. So you could very easily say it was a niche book in a niche market. Okay. Now, one of the lessons learned for me that I'd like to share is, some of this is going to sound obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that you can have an idea who the demographic is for the book you've published, who your likely readers are going to be. One of the things that fell from that exercise in terms of the publicist, the marketer, and the blog tours, you also need to do a wee bit of research in who you're pairing up with, because in retrospect, the people I was paired up with, I didn't know any better, but ignorance is no excuse, obviously, because one can research these things. The people I was paired up with had strong backgrounds in other genres, like science fiction, fantasy, romance. They weren't particularly strong in the likes of non-fiction American civil rights. So I think if you're looking to spend some cash on advertising or publicists or marketing or blog tours, check out the people you think you're about to partner up with, and make sure that the demographic, their key reach, their key readership and subscribers, make sure that fits with the genre of book you're trying to promote. I think that's something worth mentioning, and I've certainly learned from that particular exercise, and carry that one with me, and Joey and I kind of chat about that, and we talk about how to research demographics amongst other things as part of our kind of marketing process going forward. Hope that helps.
I think that is actually a profound revelation that you just mentioned, because even though, like you said, it might seem obvious, a lot of people get into these, whether it's a publishing deal or a marketing deal, and they don't think of that. Like you said, you assume they have your best interest at heart is what you're assuming, and that they have that expertise, but expertise, there's so many necessary angles when it comes to literature, right? Just the genre alone. So I think that's really, really important. And it's almost a marketer who's also an author, like you said, they might be a fantasy author or something. Whereas the person marketing your book, you would have been better off in the school system that you've now found yourself, or the library system and so on, because that's maybe going to connect better with the readers that you're looking for, or some kind of community, a club in a community where they're history buffs or something, so that it really is outside the box thinking, probably needed for something like that. Was that the most difficult aspect of marketing for you, Derek, or what else have you found challenging, if anything?
Yeah, I'm kind of sharing Julie's marketing journey. We're kind of both on that together, for very obvious reasons. And I think it is quite difficult to wrap your head around. There are lots of discussion, lots of forums, websites talk about demographics, but drilling down into the detail of the specifics of the demographic, not just people who like science fiction, but what age group you're talking about, what what their background might be, what other interests they might have. There's a whole range of demographic information that really you need to kind of consider, and accessing that can be a little bit of a kind of magic trick trying to get it. Lots of people will sell you plenty of data for plenty of money, but if you're trying to kind of keep things sensible, it can be a tricky thing to try and find. But I think it's worthwhile doing that. And while we talk about demographics, the sorts of checks I could have done had I had put a bit more thought into it, I could have quite easily gone onto these blog tour websites and had a look at what types of books they were reviewing, what type of spin they were putting on those books, what the subscribers were, the same with the publicists and the marketing companies, to see what their specialisms were. I really didn't do that. I put my faith in the hybrid publisher to some extent, but that didn't preclude me from doing my own due diligence, which I frankly failed to do in any sort of sensible form.
It looks like, Danielle, you have your hand up. Do you have a question for Derek?
I actually just had a comment to further the discussion, if that's okay.
Definitely.
I'm so fascinated by everybody's experience with all of this. I run a novel workshop, and one of the members bought a marketing course where he got all this information. I think that's what Derek was just talking about, all of this information about how to market your books in primarily Facebook, but also Amazon. And he has done so much work. He has spreadsheets galore. He's done marketing tests for different ads. But he says that Facebook is so terrible about sticking with the parameters that he sets for the ad buys. So I don't know if any of you use Facebook, or I guess this is a question, if any of you have used Facebook for your ads, or if you have any experience with that. But it was pretty surprising how a large company could not, is not following through with the parameters that he set with his ads.
Yeah, I was just going to clarify if that was the question. So you're saying when he sets the ad up, he'll pick like all the targeting stuff, and then what you're saying is that it seems like it just wants to make money, and it shows it to so many people in order to eat away at the money that he wants to spend. Am I understanding what you're saying?
I think the targeting is correct. It's just that he's using these as ads to compare 3 different covers, for instance, or 3 different ad copies. And he wanted he set the parameters for each ad to stop at, let's say, $50 spend, but it would end up $500. A serious.
Yeah, I can't speak to Facebook. Maybe at the end of the show we can get more into that, because I think that, again, that could be a whole show. But on X,
it could be.
I've set the parameters really tight, and you can do that though, where you set it up and you're like, okay, I want to have A, B, so that I can see how this ad does compared to this one, but I can have my overall cap for the whole campaign, and I can have a daily cap as well. And it never goes over because it can't. So to me, that sort of sounds like a settings thing, to be honest. I mean, because it really shouldn't be able to do that if you've clicked off both. But there is an option, even on X, and Facebook might be the same, where you can say at the bottom, it's very small, but you can click, and sometimes you might maybe have inadvertently clicked, and it allows, like in this case X, but their Facebook, it allows them to show it to where they think you'll best make the sale. Amazon does the same thing. So it could be something like that. But in terms of the total budget, I mean, that's a setting, and it should be, that should be easy. But maybe at the end we can talk more Facebook. I have a question for Derek before we do that though. When you were in the schools and you and Julie were doing that, did that spark anything or lead you in a direction you didn't expect, or that maybe helped with your writing in some way?
I have to be honest, Jen, and see, I never thought I would find myself back at school, to be honest, but there, no, it was interesting. It was really good to, as you said earlier on in the show there, really good to feel like you're putting something back. I mean, I grew up in this area for 20 odd years and formative years of my life, so it's nice to come back and feel like we're contributing something and helping the kids, helping the students. We've been doing quite a lot of the higher English, advanced higher English pupils here, which has been really interesting. And Julie talks a lot about the character arc and the preface to publication side of things, and that does help, because even if you are aware of those things and you're doing those things, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in, little refreshers are always welcome. They're always good to have, because sometimes you can miss the little gems that are in there, and I always feel it's beneficial just to touch base and just remind yourself from time to time, and it's been nice kind of mixing with the students that are there and just getting a flavour for the sorts of things that the younger folks to myself that are interested in these days, what particular books they're reading, what particular shows they're watching, predominantly the books, obviously. So that's really a nice thing, and they seem to enjoy our classes, and they, as I say, they regularly invite us back. In fact, we did a couple of back-to-back sessions in one particular school here. We started off discussing the initial idea to premise, and then we took that another session in relation to character development. So it's fun to do, it really is.
And it's amazing that you had that fan club come out of it as well. That was neat.
The kids were so fun, and I love when they come up to us after the class and questions they didn't want to raise their hand in front of the others and ask. But, I remember one girl asking me what makes a horror story scary. What do you have to say about that? And so it was nice just to have someone ask you and then appreciate the answer. And I shared with her what I thought made it. Of course, you can probably guess it would be psychological. So the motivation behind why people are doing things. And I find that the most intriguing and probably the scariest, because, I think humans are probably more scary than our make-believe monsters. So.
And the invigorating thing with being in the school too is that you kind of, let's say you're having a lack of motivation for writing, or there's an ebb and flow, but being with them, with their enthusiasm, would also spark your creativity probably and motivate you, because they're excited. They're still in that, the beginning where we are at the beginning of a project, or where we were at the start of our writing career. So it's so invigorating to hear that, you've done that more than once and they've requested you to come back. And I think that's sort of an inspirational thing. I never thought to do that because I'm doing that every day. So I never thought to try that outside, my own realm, my own job, but it's an idea for the future for sure.
It's great fun. It's very rewarding, and we get a big kick out of them sharing their story ideas and us being able to ask them questions and trying to help them tighten the plot or give them something to think about that maybe hadn't occurred to them yet. And sometimes they've had brilliant, we did a haiku class for younger kids, and Derek can tell you about this. And there was one boy that was just rattling them off like he was, he says, I do it at home in, my spare time. I write haiku. And I said, there you are. You're a poet. You are a natural born poet. It was quite inspiring.
That's fabulous. And then you add to that, giving them, information on how to publish and stuff. So somebody like that, he'll have a book out, before he's finished elementary school. That's fabulous. Really inspiring. Derek, you've got sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I love doing the kind of haiku workshops, whether it's the primary or the secondary schools that we've carried them out in, because it's one of the few times that someone will actually ask me about poetry, what got me into poetry, and what type of poetry we like. So it's really nice to know. It's great to know that there's still an interest in poetry out there, which at the moment, is not top of many people's lists, so that's nice. Sorry, I interrupted you, Jen. Apologies.
No, I was just actually going to segue into your book, your New Year's Frost. I saw the cover. It's a magical cover. I love it. And I think it's coming out next week. Did I read that right? I think December 3rd.
December 3rd, yes. Cover is by Julie, who does all the graphic works for us, and a brilliant job she does too, I would have to say, and I want to say that. It's a book. It's a book. It's wintry themed poetry, some reflective, some more vignette style, but it's a little collection I've been working on, and I hope that folks who look into it enjoy it. To be honest, it comes out December 3rd, as you said.
What's your process for poetry, Derek? Because I know you and Julie write a lot of different things together, but when you're writing poetry, are you inspired by a specific moment? Do you have a notebook, or do you write on your phone? Like, what does that look like for you in terms of the writing process?
That's a great question. It really depends what I have to hand, Jen. To be honest, I used to digitally dictate poetry. When the inspiration strikes, it strikes, as you know. So sometimes it's very spur of the moment. So I've written poetry on the backs of napkins in restaurants, and nowadays I do it on my phone if I don't, if I'm either doing that as dictation or as typed. So whenever the moment strikes, sometimes it's spur of the moment, it just lands, and you want to capture the essence of that moment, the lightning in the bottle, as it were. And sometimes it's more, there's more thought into it, in particular some of the subject matters that Julie and I write about. It needs a wee bit kind of consideration. Am I actually saying what I intend to say? Could it be interpreted another way? Because one of the interesting things that Julie and I have found collaborating is that there are regional variances in how we use words and phraseology. That a particular way we might say things in this neck of the woods might be understood in a slightly different way in the States, for example. So that's kind of given me an enhanced insight into ensuring that the phraseology and choice of wording does exactly as I intended to say.
That's actually a really important lesson, and it's good that you're collaborating, because if, say, your largest markets, like you said, might be the US and UK, if you're putting out a collaborative poetry book, for example, and it means something completely different over the sea, over the ocean, that way the two of you can work together to make sure that the final product is something that will be understood in the way that you both intended it. So I think it's not just vocabulary, right? Like you said, it's how those words are strung together that creates that meaning. So that's really important for people to keep in mind when they're writing.
Yeah, it is. We've actually started, when I'm using particular Scottish words or UK words for the American market, we're doing little footnotes now at the bottom just to clarify what they are,
That's perfect. We're almost short of time, but I just wanted, before I turn it back over to Laban, to say you have the Literary Hedgehog out, and I hear that that's a sequel to the Poetry Mouse. Can either of you maybe speak a little bit about that? Because I think that would be a perfect Christmas gift or holiday read for little ones.
We just love this series of books that we started with the little field mouse, Evie. And it's kind of one of those glass ceiling stories. Evie's not sure she has the confidence. She really wants to be a poet, but she's busy doing something else in town. And so it's about finding friends and support, and that it takes a team sometimes to get your dreams to come true. And her friend Braden helps her see that. And in the first book, she submits her poetry. In the second book, The Literary Hedgehog, that was just released, this is Mr. Hedgehog, and he's not quite sure that the city magazine should publish poetry by a mouse, let alone a female mouse. And so he learns some lessons along the way from his secretary. And when he has a crisis there at the publishing house, he has to decide what to do, and he takes a chance on Evie. And it turns out great for all of them. So it's just a nice story about bias, about friendship and support, and that you need help from your friends sometimes to succeed.
Excellent stuff. Now, moving on. Before I invite our guests to ask questions, I'll probably ask one myself, yeah? With the holiday season approaching, what do you hope children and families will take away from reading The Literary Hedgehog together?
Well, I hope that children would see that following their dream, that they can be and do anything they want to be or do. And there's always a way. It's never too late to change your mind or change your life, change your path. And that's kind of what this story's about. Doing what you love and loving what you do. And I think that's a beautiful message and should be shared with everyone.
That's such a wonderful message to share during this holiday season. Another quick question. The Literary Hedgehog builds on the themes of friendship and courage introduced in the Poetry Mouse. How did you approach developing the characters and message for this sequel?
I like to kind of approach it subtly, through the characters' actions, showing that Evie didn't have the confidence just to start submitting poetry. She needed a little encouragement. She needed a friend who spoke to her honestly and believed in her and kind of helped push her on her way. And once she got going, there was no stopping her. So I think it's a story about asking for help when you need it and being able to accept help when it's offered.
Excellent. We always need help at one point or another to move to the next level.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I'll invite more questions from the guest audience.
We had a lot of questions throughout, so I'm not sure if there's any left, but does anyone want to speak to the Facebook question earlier? I don't know, where do you tend to advertise, Derek and Julie?
Well, I can't speak to Facebook because I haven't advertised on Facebook, but I have advertised on X and I have advertised on Pinterest. I haven't experienced the scenario that was outlined earlier by the lady that was on the call. Very much my experience reflects your own, Jen, that you kind of set the caps, and the caps have never been exceeded with the final outturn,
One of the places we've also began to explore is advertising in trade magazines. For example, the Witches magazine is one where I've placed an ad for my Spec Fix, We Three, and the Crooked Crone. And we place that. We have one that will be coming out in their winter edition for our Christmas, because we do touch on some of the pagan background and Celtic history. So we're advertising in magazines where our links, QR codes are there for people to purchase. That way, we're just trying to expand in all areas, not just social media, to see what's working for our books.
That is a fantastic idea to expand, because I've been, chatting about this with lots of different people, and not a lot of people say magazines or online publications. It's usually we're giving our links to promo sites that will then just show up for one day. But what about contacting your local theater I'm talking live theater and getting in one of their programs or these online magazines, like you said. That's a really intriguing idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a little local, what would it be called, Derek? I don't. It's like a guide, but it's businesses in the community, and you can place ads in that.
There's a little community magazine comes out once a month for the town that we live in the borders, and you can place adverts in there, a variety of different adverts, and it's a very creative area that we are in. So lots of writers and potters, artists of all different types and forms and formats. So it's a very good creative hub, and there are always some events of some type or another kind of going on here. And we look to try and maximise that. And there are quite a few shops here that Julie and I have talked about, maybe placing a book or two in. And so that's something we're looking to explore at tail end of this year, beginning of next year.
Excellent. Thank you for that addition, Derek. Jen, what are some of the key takeaways from this talk today?
Well, I really enjoyed it, and it got me thinking just about a lot of alternatives. So, we've done many shows, and I've kind of got a little notebook that I have with different ideas that I have yet to try. But today, trying to get into local libraries or schools to run workshops, because that's just more word of mouth. And also just kind of giving back to the community. And then the last one there about alternative places to place ads. I also have local theaters and magazines and the business community and stuff. And I had never thought to reach out to put ads in any of those. The most creative thing I did, I got my name on a movie theater marquee during the COVID kind of lockdowns because they couldn't advertise. And so they were selling space on that. I thought that was original, but you can't do that every day. So your ideas really helped. And I want to thank you for sharing them.
Excellent. My key takeaways were speaking engagements. Yeah, that they not only promote books, they also leave a lasting impact on young readers, which is what basically Julie and Derek are doing. And the other one, the word of mouth. Word of mouth is very powerful. Actually, that counts for about 60% of advertising. So, the rest takes up 40%. So, using word of mouth, what they're doing is quite powerful.
That's absolutely true. And we just want to encourage everybody who is listening and who listens to this recording later to just try something new. I think this podcast really encourages that. So if you heard something today that inspired you, give it a try. And then that way, when you tune in a week or two, you can share that with other people to let them know how it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for visiting the Cozy Book Nook today. We look forward to connecting next week. Commit to doing something great for your book. And we'll see you next Tuesday at noon East.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us. It's been a pleasure.
It's been such a pleasure. We're privileged to have you on the show.
Yeah, I will format the recording and make sure that gets sent out to you and posted on my YouTube and website and stuff too. So thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
It was a great pleasure.
You're welcome. The pleasure was ours.
We had Danielle who was trying to ask some question. Is she still on there?
No, I don't see her. But maybe this we can file that away, and next week maybe revisit it again. And anyone who has that expertise could share that, because I have more experience on the X side, but Facebook should have a place that you can set a cap.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much, everyone, for sparing time out of your busy schedule to log on to the Cozy Book Nook. Have a wonderful day.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.